Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our Ava Labs and Crypto.com live video AMA. My name is Tina Baker-Taylor, and I'm the General Manager for the UK at Crypto.com, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's live stream. The move toward building the Internet of Finance and truly enabling decentralized applications requires interoperable open source platforms and the ability for developers to build reliable and secure applications with complex rule sets. Avalanche is working to democratize financial markets and bridge all blockchain platforms together into one interoperable ecosystem. But what does that mean exactly? Well, I'm delighted today to be joined by my great friend, John Wu, President at Ava Labs, to tell us more. Hey, John, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Tina, pleasure to be here. Nice to see you. And I'm very excited to talk to this great audience.
Yes, we're excited to have you. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming on. Without intending to diminish other projects, it's fair to say that Bitcoin's distinct use case and the race is really on to lead. The Ethereum built as the first kind of mover among blockchain networks and looking after higher throughput and composability and interoperability are some of the things that you guys are really focused on. So I mentioned that the Avalanche network is, pitched to be the Internet of Finance. So start us off with an introduction about yourself and Ava Labs and exactly what do you mean by the Internet of Finance?
Sure. So very quickly, I'm John Wu, President of Ava Labs, the team behind Avalanche, which is the next generation protocol. We are Ethereum compatible. We're very fast, and the cost to deploy apps on us and transact is very cheap. Now, my background is I was a professional technology investor at some large funds. And when I stopped investing for these large funds, I realized how unempowered the individual was, how hard it was for them to get access to private securities like a SpaceX today or a Stripe today, how hard it was to invest in all these new great platforms in real estate like Cadre. So there's a whole set of stuff out there that makes it very hard for individuals to invest in. The world of digitizing these assets and making it available, that's really what the dream of the 2017 ICO world was all about.
Yeah.
The issues back then, though, versus today was regulation wasn't very clear, and all the raises in the U.S. were actually illegal raises, and also, frankly, the technology wasn't there. Platforms are not scalable, and they were not fast. Yeah. So the mission of Ava Labs has always been to create a platform where people can and enterprises can digitize assets, create these assets, and exchange them in a very scalable and compliant and also cheap, and developers can have a composable platform. So that's what we're about. That's our mission, to be able to enable anyone to digitize and exchange assets very easily, as hopefully one day as easy as it is to send an email to share information.
Okay, well, that's an awesome aspiration. When we're talking about digitizing existing, traditional infrastructure, for example, I know that Avalanche aims to not only cover the crypto sector, but also the enterprise market, right? So in order to really deliver or drive the decentralized benefits, how are you approaching some of those traditional enterprise players who are a little bit more familiar with a permission blockchain ecosystem?
Right. So a lot of the traditional enterprises, and by the way, just to give an example of the size of the market, obviously DeFi has, I think last I checked, about $50 billion of trapped value in the DeFi ecosystem. Great growth, fantastic, especially in the last 12 months. But there's $360 trillion of assets that sit on balance sheets of financial services company that is still being recorded and transacted and exchanged in very old and poor, not very automated workflow, put it that way. So that's a much larger market. So let's just start with that. However, part of the reason why it's hard to make that digitized is because there's a lot of regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy for a lot of these financial services companies to simply say, I'm just going to be in the permissionless world.
Right.
So I think there's intermittent steps that one has to take. And what we've done at Ava Labs is our blockchain architecture enables what we call a subnetwork, or basically think of it as almost like a private blockchain,
Okay.
where either a consortium of these financial services companies or an individual one can create their own validator set and create their own governance that so for their jurisdiction to make sure that they comply. And I think that is really the first step for these enterprises to say,
Mm-hmm.
yes, okay, we understand the permissionless world is fantastic in the long, long run. On Avalanche, we can create a private blockchain that allows them to be compliant through the governance at the network level, not just at the smart contract level. And then one day, the feature we have built in is it enables them to go into the permissionless world very easily. So you have to take steps into this and be compliant. And that's why we've done our architecture the way it's been done.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. We have seen, I think, over the last couple of years, a real transition from those, walled gardens to kind of the consortium model. Okay, we'll play with you, and we'll play with you, and we'll play with you. We'll let you in. To the understanding that really the permissionless ecosystem is where a lot of the benefit sits. But having those governance, the architecture to be able to produce the required MI or produce the necessary compliance requirements to meet your regulatory obligations, it just kind of didn't exist before. So is that part of the kind of institutionalizing of the infrastructure that you guys are working on to be able to meet those requirements?
Yes, absolutely. I think rules were less clear. Certain infrastructure players like, Fidelity getting into the custody game, now that rules are a little bit clearer. All
Right.
of the pieces behind the scenes that enable people to move forward in terms of a regulatory pattern that is compliance oriented has enabled players like us to say, okay, now you care more about technology because regulation is making it possible. You can now, if you're a fund of 150 million of assets, dollars or more in the US, you have to have a qualified custodian. In 2017, there were no qualified custodians. Today, there are a lot. I mean, and we partner with a lot of them. And then on top of that, you've got rules that have changed so that people have a better, fact pattern they can line up against in order so that they can feel comfortable. Part of what 2017 was, and why enterprises didn't take off more in this space was there was the players in the infrastructure space weren't there, and B, you needed someone to really go and make sure and test the waters out with the regulators.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was president of the Digital Assets Group at SharesPost before this. They've been bought by someone else, but they basically had a secondary platform, a marketplace, if you will, for trading private shares. And they had an ATS, which think of it as a license that the SEC allows. And you have broker-dealer licenses, and people individually had to take tests, Series 7, 63, and then you need a compliance officer. All of these things that most OG in crypto don't even realize exist in the traditional finance world. And, I probably worked countless amount of hours with the SEC to help make that ATS not only compliant for transacting and exchanging a private share, but also for a digitized share. So that was 17 to 19. And then in 20, when that was a lot clearer, people said, okay, where is the technology that can make this happen fast and quick and cheap?
Yeah. Well, okay. So as someone who got into blockchain, a few years back, coming from the enterprise side, I have observed multiple bubbles along the way, right? And some of those have been helpful to increase awareness, and some of them have been less helpful, or elements of those bubbles have been less helpful in really solidifying adoption. So I guess what my question is what can we expect from Avalanche to put in place the infrastructure to do things differently so that we could actually get the masses on board?
So my first part of this is not really answer the question, but I just want to tell whoever gave that great question to not be frustrated, because if you got frustrated back in the 1990s and 2000, you would have sold your Amazon stock at like 50 cents. And today is trading at 3,000 and change. There are plenty that went out of business. So this is the normal tech cycle. You have ups and downs, but I think you even said, or the writer of the AMA question basically said it increases awareness and it gets better each cycle. Yeah. So where are we with this? First, on a meta level, I think we go back to the 3 stages of what crypto has been. Bitcoin was really the first introduction in a mass scale. There were cryptocurrencies before Bitcoin, but in 2008, so it's called about 12 years now, Bitcoin was really the first wave. It introduced decentralization and introduced digital money and distributed governance. And then the Ethereum guys said, okay, that's great, but we want to create things on top of this. Like, we want to do things. And they came out and basically created a system where people can develop dApps on top of it. And then ecosystems form from that. But what we noticed in 3 years, 4 years later was that not just us at Avalanche, but other first layer smart contract platforms noticed that there were things missing. So we had the concept introduced, we had ecosystems developed, but an ecosystem is not an economy. And in order to have an economy, you have to have things transact. So you need speed, you need scale, and very importantly, you can't have prohibitive costs. So a whole new group of people or teams started launching, like us, Avalanche, and adjusted their blockchain architecture and their consensus protocol for the benefits of creating an economy. Our cost to transact transacting on Avalanche is, very cheap compared to other places. And this generation of protocols is about growing an economy. Now, what Avalanche is doing is, well, I should say, the protocols out there. What the original team at Ava Labs did was do it in a way that developers can really do things easily, that composability part. So listening to the community, one of the good decisions that was made by the team of Ava Labs before Avalanche became its own thing and out in the world was that it was EVM compatible. So if you are a developer, on Solidity on Ethereum, it's relatively easy for you to do the same thing on Avalanche. It's not the same on other platforms. It makes it a lot harder.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I was going to ask is, dApp usage. It's been a little slower to take off. And, what is unique about Avalanche that will hopefully enable the mass adoption of dApp technology? And I think, you've addressed the gas price. And you've addressed, the architecture to be able to build, more simply, I guess. What else is sufficiently different about this protocol layer that enables that?
Composability and usability. So at the end user, they're great partners, and we're, full disclosure, we're partnered with Crypto.com. Guys like you have made it very easy for the end user to do things, buy, sell, whatever they want to do. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in the back end that they are not aware of. And that happens basically not just in crypto, but at Venmo, PayPal, you name it. So people have painstakingly, yourselves and others, to make the user experience a lot better. So, because in the end, if you're talking about mass adoption, the person using this doesn't want to, they're not the old crowd where they care about the nooks and crannies and using MetaMask or something. They want a very easy experience. They have alternatives. This experience has benefits, but they won't experience the benefits if it's not easy to use.
For
So
sure.
on the user side, I think it's explicitly partnering with people like your firm who've done that. It is one thing that Ava Labs has done. The second thing is the experience of the developers. So, in biz dev, a lot of the functions that we do at Ava Labs is to make sure that there's partnerships with infrastructure providers that have features that allow developers with that streamlined experience. Just like it is for the user to have a very easy experience, we want easy experience for developers as well.
Well, you do quite a lot to kind of seed your community. So, the Ava Labs, umbrella includes quite a lot of developer engagement. Tell us about that.
So I think all blockchains, all cryptocurrencies forget that in the end, no matter whether it's crypto or traditional tech, you have to listen to your users. And the users, and who are you building things for? You have the users from a utility perspective and developers who like to build on top of the platform. And, we at Default listen to our community. We have a great community, and it's almost like that is our customer service support feedback mechanism.
Right.
And the crazy thing about it is we're in, I think, 15 to 20 different markets around the world. We're global. Tastes are different. Styles are different. You guys are overseas in Europe. There are things that Europeans can do that the US can't do, fiat to crypto.com, for instance. There's different regulations, different rules. So it's great in the sense that if you really listen to your community, you can figure out things. The difficulty arises when it is a global business and people in different jurisdictions have different rules and different tastes.
So we had a question from someone in Southeast Asia, speaking of different places, and they've said, it's a very vibrant market and many projects developed there are using layer 1 protocols, obviously. What about Southeast Asia is unique for Ava Labs, and how do you plan to expand in that region? I think is something.
So similar to what I just said about how each region is different. Southeast Asia is different from China, which is different from Korea, which is different from Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, means of distribution. China is very WeChat oriented. Southeast Asia, they use Telegram, they use stuff I think a lot of the US people use as well. So that's the first thing to recognize. How do you reach that community? And then they do have different styles and tastes. So what we've done is we have local presence, and our local managers and community managers really cater to the local tastes. And we've now established partnerships with wallet providers, exchanges in Southeast Asia, and our community there is building fantastic and growing very fast. I will say it is an incredible community because they really, really are growing as a whole community very quickly. But even in each country in Southeast Asia, Vietnam is different from Indonesia, which is different from Singapore. So as this world grows and adoption of crypto, everyone, as global as it is, but it still is very regional in style. So that's what people have to remember.
100%. I think, especially in the West, sometimes we have this perspective of Asia, and I'm often explaining to people that ASEAN, Japan, China, Singapore, they're all distinctly different. There isn't in Asia.
And the crypto community is figuring this out. If you look at Uniswap, the interface is very simple, clean. Americans like simple, clean. It's almost like Google typing in search keywords. It's a very plain page. If you look at SushiSwap, if you look at Pancake, that interface is more like the old Yahoo with things going all over the place. And it's a little bit messy to the US person. But I think certain regions in Asia, they actually like that. They feel like they like the choice. Whereas Americans have now reduced it to just give me the 20-second tweet or whatever. Give me the shortcut. Give me the clip notes.
Yeah, very true. All right, so let's talk a little bit about DeFi. What role will Avalanche be playing in DeFi, and how will the old versus the new world of finance differ?
Well, first and foremost is we are a platform and we want people to develop on us, develop new applications in DeFi. We have the community has built what we call the AEB bridge, Avalanche Ethereum bridge. So assets been transferring over and back and forth. It's a two-way bridge. We have the we meaning the community has led a project called Pangolin, which is similar to Uniswap or Sushi. It's got TVLs growing the hundreds of millions now. So, and transactions have been fantastic. And that's one thing that we're very focused on and hoping to find more projects and people want to build on top of that. And naturally, the next step will be lending and borrowing platforms. We are in constant talks with developers and projects who want to build that on top of us as well. And other projects, Sushi is on top of us as well. So
how easy is it for Ethereum dApps to either, can they completely move on to Avalanche, and how hard would that be if they wanted to just?
So it's very easy. Easy from two perspectives. One, from porting the code over because it's very similar code. And then the assets are supported on both sides relatively easy with very little changes. So the fact that everything was built in the architecture to be EVM compatible makes all of that very fungible. Okay.
So we've recently had some in-depth discussions about this, but from a Ava perspective, NFTs, lots of stuff happening in NFTs right now. What's your personal opinion on the NFT, and how does Avalanche presume to or expect to play in the NFT market?
So it's funny because I had this call from someone who went to OpenSea. It's a fantastic marketplace, but because of the price to make a transaction, and this group or person was just trying to it's a baseball card. It's not like, it's not Beeple. They were just trying to do a fun thing, and it's entertainment.
I did a test, and I bought something that was $50, and I think it cost me $80 to buy it and gas.
So that's been the nature of a lot of calls to us. How can we support teams who want to create, who have content or who want to create content and create either collectibles or create literally like event ticketing, the ticket platform stuff via an NFT on Avalanche. Ava Labs, again, is just the software company supporting a lot of this, but helping, think of us almost like an IT consulting firm, helping people build on top of Avalanche, the protocol that's out there. So that's most of the calls we've been getting. It was like, wow, so you guys did this in DeFi. It's the same thing happening in the NFT. On top of that, what's fascinating is, I think we talked about this earlier, where the UI UX experience for DeFi is just kind of like learning and getting mass adoption. Financial products are just being made easier by companies like yours. In NFT, I think a lot of the people leading the charge are traditional companies. NBA Top Shots. Like, if you give that user an OG experience, you will not have a business. So the usability, the UI UX is even more important in the world of NFTs. And it is blockchain tech plus web-enabled tech. And I think that is what we've been focused on, creating a balance on that in order to give the benefits of blockchain and crypto, but making the experience like they are literally just buying a JPEG, even though it is on a blockchain and has provenance.
Well, we've talked about the usability of NFTs. And so, the art use case is certainly one. We've got music use cases out there. Where do you kind of see the NFT going when you're talking specifically about usability? Like, what are they going to be used for other than a collectible? Where do you see the opportunities in that space?
So it can help change some business models. Event ticketing, for instance. Today, the intermediaries control the secondary transaction flow. And we know that QR codes are easier to copy. And there's often times when 5 people show up for the same seat at a concert. And the artists kind of lose control of who is the audience ultimately that shows up. On using an NFT for that, A, you have more provenance, so you really know who deserves to be there. B, you can program into the smart contract, a percentage of sales going back to the artist for the secondary sales to increase their revenue stream. And lastly, very important, you can see the history of ownership of that. So if you see the history of ownership, you actually have a better understanding of who your fan base is, and you can engage with them better. So suddenly, we're talking about digital collectibles on one end, but on the other end, you can actually improve businesses and business models and improve the experience that the actual content creator has with his audience.
Brilliant. Well, John, you and I are going to jump over to Clubhouse in a minute and do a live Q&A with anybody that's watching us now. You will see the Clubhouse link come up in the YouTube chat. So definitely come and join us in a few minutes over on Clubhouse, where we'll take your questions directly. Before we do that, if you were asked to sum up Avalanche in one word, what would it be? And what can we kind of expect in your roadmap going forward that really supports that kind of one word? So, just who are you and what's coming next?
The one word would be fast.
Okay, good.
So fast for new features. You'll see the iteration of new features for users. Fast in terms of different things being developed. Fast in terms of business partnerships that will be announced. Lots of things are going on, and they happen at a very, very fast pace. Not to mention it's Visa-like transaction TPS, Visa-like TPS.
So what are you most excited about for 2021 for Avalanche?
So the stuff I'm most excited about, you guys have to hear very shortly. My marketing team will not allow me. But general categories, again, are the features that are coming on a technology side and some of the partnerships that will be announced.
Okay, well, I guess maybe when we move over to Clubhouse, I can try and get something out of you that marketing will regret. All right. So before we go, any closing thoughts for our viewers today before we jump over to Clubhouse for the Q&A?
Well, I think, again, like one of the things that should not be overlooked is that players such as yourselves have really increased adoption to the mass market, making it very easy to use. We're doing it for developers, you're doing it for the end user, and that's all good, because as that continues, going back to the second question, awareness happens for the space. When awareness happens to the space, there's a lot of emerging technology and business models that will come that we can't even think of today. And continue listening to your thoughts. You're well populated on various social medias. We do Clubhouses together, and feel free to follow me at John1Wu on Twitter, and stay tuned.
Great. And if you'd like to follow Ava Labs, you could do that at Ava Labs Official, all one word.
AVALab.org.
Or avalab.org. Okay.
Yep. That's our website. That is very easy. Ava Labs Official is, I think, the Twitter handle and the Telegram channel. So if you are a user, a non-techie person, you can go to avalabs.org, and I think it's avalabs.org social. Find our communities to join. If you are a tech person, first and foremost, just start developing on us and test out all this stuff for yourself. Don't take my word for it. But join our Discord channel, and everything's there on avalabs.org, the website.
Brilliant. Well, if your question was asked during today's AMA, you may have won a share of the AMA or the AVAX prize pool. And if you have it will be deposited into your app in the next 14 days. If you'd like to stay in touch with us at crypto.com and attend future AMAs, please follow us on Twitter and our official Telegram channels and our Clubhouse channel, where John and I are going to hop over to now, and we'll be taking your questions direct. So please come over to Clubhouse and follow us. John, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Thank you, guys.
I'll see you there. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.